Greetings. Here we are, May 9th, 2023. Um, Having a rough time. I got two vaccines recently, one for shingles and one for pneumococcal. And man, rough, rough ride. Felt great for quite a few hours after them. Then I got really cold and I don't know, I just feel out of sorts, dizzy and chest pain. Uh, anyway, been thinking about one of my themes, one of the things I keep talking about is like what's happening to our mind, and you can't really separate our mind now, the collective mind, us, our culture. You can't really separate that from our emergent computer network. Um, People keep talking about AI. They think about it as if one machine somewhere is going to just suddenly become genius, some colossus hidden away in some basement of the military or something. But what is emerging is, in fact, a distributed network of computing skills that compounds on itself, adds to itself, self-replicating strings of code, algorithmically expansive. It's Turing's string of tape and on-off switches, ever faster, but with switches and nodes and hubs all on this fiber optic network now. Um, at first, there was like a network installed fiber optic, I think in the 90s, and it was just like dark fiber because we didn't have the capacity to even use it yet. And now pretty much that's what is coming online. AT&T, this distributed computer network. And it's almost mimicking like nature, like networks that have emerged in nature before. But, but there's nefarious actors between us and the distributed network that's happening. I think there was sort of like a peak of freedom that happened with the distributed network. I want to say around 2004, early thousands. Um, I'm going to bring up Anonymous, uh, Commander X. They were basically using the distributed network for their ends, for their goals. And it's not always going to be a corporate top-down use of the network. Back then, they could say, "Look, we're anonymous, we're diffuse. There's not any one of us that you can take down because we're all over the place. We've got this denial of service attack that they could teach anybody how to do it. You could download, like it was like an app almost, and it was like a little thing you could download, and then anybody with a laptop could become a part of the anonymous network, and so they could call for things to happen on certain days, and they did. And of course, the police state, the corporate state that is also emerging at the same time, was really concerned about that, and they really got onto that and really kind of squashed that. And what became known as Q, there is no Q really. If you really study the phenomenon of it, It's a collective effort of people chatting, gamers chatting, 4chan, and they really didn't like Hillary Clinton uh, in 2016. They were a big factor in Trump winning. I could feel it on. I had a friend who was really immersed in that world, really smart guy with computer access and everything, and he was constantly chatting and constantly gaming and constantly sharing links and information with each other. Basically, the 4chaners are like, at that stage, we're just really connected, really cool people that when you're having a conversation, you can just instantly pull up the link to anything you want, to reference. They're smart enough, they have access enough to these distributed networks that they could just find a link to anything we're talking about. Someone say, I don't believe you, man. I can say, okay, yeah, here it is. The attorney general really did say this. Here it is right here. Rod Rosenstein, his press release from yesterday, whatever, here it is. So they're chatting, they're linking, they're showing videos to each other. And it's just this expansive network. And at some point they determined they're kind of anti-establishment. They were sort of left-leaning, the ones I knew, the way I was seeing it. But they weren't typical Democrats, that's for sure. And they were just kind of looking at everything critically, and or hey, I like that. What they seemed to like was disruptions. They didn't like the establishment very much. Anything that's established, kind of what you call the swamp, any of that kind of stuff. And anything that's seen as disrupting that was kind of good. And at some point around May, June of 2016, they decided that even though they didn't really like Trump, that somehow he was going to be able to disrupt the establishment. And so many of them turned in favor of Trump, and they were a factor. And they've been vilified, So the establishment's now fighting this war. It has this kind of open distributed network that it wants to use for commerce, for advertising. It's something that the establishment itself is growing as a part of this computer network that we're all on. But at the same time, it realizes that organically, real people with real concerns and real things have a great appeal and become really infinitely more interesting. You know, New emergent media technologies have always had this problem. TV, like they want to have it just be that there's only 4 networks controlling all of what you see on TV, but they left these little loopholes in early days in the local programming. And what they found was that a lot of people would rather watch their neighbor produce something low budget, just talking about their baking or something, just because it's local and it's kind of cool. And so there's always been an effort to kind of thwart that, push that back, put the low budget production. Let's don't get people watching that. We really want their eyes on ABC, getting the big message that we're trying to put out there. And that's this fundamental dichotomy, this fundamental struggle right now of what are your eyes looking at? What are you hearing? What are you paying attention to? When COVID came out, and certain doctors were coming out there and saying, you know what, it's really weird that so many people are dying on intubators from this disease that we have found is treatable. Certain doctors who didn't have access to things, doctors from poorer communities around the world wanted to save their patients. And so they were able to use hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin, use things effectively for early treatments. And then if they got patients that were more advanced, they were using corticosterols and antibody treatments and things like that. And they were actually having some success. But then there was sort of like this fake consensus being pushed over the network of information. Was that there's nothing you can do for COVID. Early treatments don't work. Ivermectin's not effective. Hydroxychloroquine, that doesn't work, and these are in fact dangerous, and people are going to use them on their own. And do their own research and all this kind of stuff. And so there's this dichotomy set up of like certain doctors, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, Dr. Peter McCullough, Dr. Robert Malone. People were coming on, the Bakersfield doctors, that guy Erickson or whatever, coming on, throwing press conferences or coming on YouTube and saying, "Hey, look, I've got this protocol that works." Depending on what stage of the infection they are at with the COVID exposure, if they come in and they've just been exposed to COVID, we can actually, by using saline flushing through their nostrils and Listerine aggressive rinsing, we can actually stop it from advancing right there if we catch it at that stage. Okay, and then if it advances more than that, now we can use protocols of heavy zinc combined with other things, and look, we're able to save them there. And they never need to go to the point where they're just advanced to these like incredibly weird autoimmune cytokine cascades and needing to go on intubators. The intubator is basically a death sentence. We had still yet to have a discussion about this, but so this tension between an organically evolving informational network, distributed network of information, the internet, and one that's controlled by certain nodes, by certain monopolies, certain filters. They want to become the filter through which your information comes so that you won't just see what's out there on the internet. You won't be able to just log on and get to see and talk to people everywhere. You're going to be doing it through an AT&T filter, through a Microsoft filter. And they want to say, "Oh no, look, Jeff, no, we don't want you to hear that. We've got a press conference from Dr. Fauci, our Moderna, Gilead, Pfizer connected doctor. We have him, and we'd love for you just to hear from him, and for you to not hear from anybody else." And so they did that. They actually made it so, even though everybody's hooked up to this massive and awesome distributed network of information, you don't have access to the information anymore. And now you're experiencing it through a corporate filter of control. And so, these social media that were these search engines that were supposed to just be neutral search engines. Google is no longer, everyone knows, it's horrible. It's like a anti-search. It's like a hide things from you engine. It's not a search engine. It's a hide stuff from you engine, right? And this is kind of going against nature itself. Nature wanted this network of fiber optic emergent intelligence to be free and to be an emergent intelligent thing, a kind of an emerging noosphere. A lot of the science fiction writers have written about it as if it's a leviathan. They were sensing this is where it's going to go, this networked intelligence. Even H.G. Wells writes about a kind of a networked computer world in the future. For him, it's bad. It's a monster. But it doesn't have to be a monster. It's basically a reflection of us. And so are we controlled people manipulated by fear? Yes, we are at this point. But we don't have to be. And the information can be free. If people could have accessed Dr. Jay Bhattacharya with the equal amount of ease, instead you had to search and keep coming to find him here and there. He'd move over, he'd get banned from YouTube. And, Dr. Robert Malone would give a great interview with Joe Rogan. And then suddenly both Joe Rogan and Dr. Robert Malone were being smeared and you couldn't find them. And then Joe Rogan's gone. He's no longer on YouTube. You have to search, find him. Okay, then you have to find him on Spotify. Okay, and then now there's a big, a campaign to vilify Spotify for having on Joe Rogan. So, but if it was just allowed to just be free, and just allow the ideas themselves to compete, with each other on the merit of the idea, on the merit of what is said, not so much focused on who said it, but what is said. That's the way nature intended for the internet to be. That's what's supposed to be emergent in us humans in our evolution. Instead, it's been thwarted by nefarious corporate entities that are blocking us from that type of evolution, type of Darwin in the machines. You know, our machines are us. You know, the universe doesn't stop at the end of our skin, and you know, the universe includes us and the things we make and the tools we use. It's all part of the universe. It's all us. And things in nature are competitive, yes, but they're also symbiotic. And they're also tend to evolve in networks. Trees are all connected at the roots, and they're sharing nutrients, sharing information with each other. Things are happening in a vast network underneath the soil, right? It famously involves the fungus as well, these fungal networks, you know. So our informational network was kind of a mirror of that. But it's not if it's now being filtered and pumped through tiny control portals where they let you see one thing at a time. You know, don't look over, no, don't look over there. We got this thing for you to look at. This is what we wanted to say about this. And we're all going to create this false census. I mean, this false consensus. We've all, oh yes, everyone agrees now, Jeff. Huh? And then you find out you're like, no, they didn't. No, not everyone agrees. Just this narrow band of doctors that you've bullied into agreeing with your current narrative are saying this. And it seems that way because when I go on the internet, I can't see anybody else. So it's this fake consensus that, you know, ivermectin is a horse dewormer, for example. There came a time when it just seemed like, oh, that's just widely, everyone accepts that. Everyone who's logical, everyone who's smart, they just know that. They don't, it's just an accepted consensus, you know? But that was true. That wasn't true. That was a lie. You know, that was a created impression through this filter that's blocking us, not allowing us to have access to a free internet. Net neutrality was a battle that we lost, and you can really feel it. And we've had these little moments. People have tried to use it. Of course, they had their own personality problems. You know, the anonymous Commander X. He's a person with an ego and problems. You know, but nonetheless, he created this idea. He didn't create this idea. He utilized this idea, publicized this idea that a vast network of people just could get on there and use the network themselves. And that's what I think the establishment is so worried about. And that's why they're so, you know, keen on controlling social media now. That's why the current establishment, mainly Democrats, but some Republicans too, are of this mind that, oh, we can't just let people on there by themselves. They can't just go on there and have their own unfiltered experience on the internet, do their own research. We can't let that happen. We got to control what they're seeing, got to control what they're saying, and control their speech. AOC was very happy when Tucker Carlson was removed from Fox, and she said that deplatforming works. Deplatforming works, folks. And she said that free speech, is actually violence. It's like, you know, she, without really citing specific examples, she said that Tucker Carlson's speech was violence. Speech itself is violence, and that deplatforming works. And that since this speech is now being associated with people that we don't like as a culture, we've all been turned, you know, to not like certain personalities and to really love other personalities. So we're not even judging words or packages of information based on what they're saying anymore. The content doesn't matter. It just matter who says it or doesn't say it, right? Because there's certain, you're in the sort of good group or in the bad group, right? And this is all part of the filter, the controlling this beautiful and powerful thing that is the internet. It has so much potential, still has potential, maybe. So far, it's making us crazy. Because when you go around saying an ivermectin, which won awards and cured river blindness, but you are a smart, educated person, and you've now, in the modern times, been turned to this kind of dark ages mentality, and you're repeating things that are lies, then we're seeing that the internet is actually a dark control mechanism controlled by evil. And the fruits of it, when you go out in society and talk to people and hear what they say and stuff, you can see that it's evil. They should know more. They should be really connected to things and experiencing this beautiful sharing of information that organically what people like and what flows around, but it's not organic anymore. It's highly controlled. Anyway, that's what I want to talk about a little bit about today. Is, you know, it's not even that, that it's not print or anything like that. Marshall McLuhan, I kind of keep saying that he was warning us about digital electronic media. Actually, he has a lot to say about print media. He thought that the best times were when you had to have old people around that remembered stuff and told the young kids verbally, you know, almost like once you get to a print culture, then you don't need the old people with wisdom anymore because you got books. Anybody can go get the book now. That's a side note, but we're dealing with these communications technologies and a distributed network, and we need to figure it out more, re-liberalize it. We need lots of nodes on that network, lots of places to go and get information, not just three, or Google, Amazon, Meta, uh, Amazon, Microsoft. you know um, these are monopolies, right? And we should be spending 50% of our time or more on non-monopoly nodes on the network. Non-monopoly nodes on the network, distributing information, trying to reach us, trying to talk to us and include us, people that encourage our voice, encourage us to say things and empower us. Say, here, I've got something. There is this thing going around called COVID. It's dangerous. I've got options for you that will empower you to do things at every phase of the disease. I don't just say no, no, that doesn't work. No, ivermectin, no. Hydrochloric, no. No, no, zinc, no. Vitamin D doesn't matter. Going outside, no. Sunshine doesn't matter. No, 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 no. The only thing that works is Pfizer, right? That's control, and that's what we've surrendered. The fact that we're still not dealing with this is horrible. We're going into an election cycle. I think this election cycle is just going to be horrible. What I've seen of it so far is horrible. We're talking about gropey old men, one that can't remember where he is, and he's already been elevated as the Democratic candidate. They're not even going to have a primary this time. They're not even going to bother doing that. Democracy's dead. It's over. And over on the Republican side, you got DeSantis. DeSantis is actually young and speaks pretty well at times, but he's got a lot of baggage. So I don't know. And then you got Trump. It's just like, and so there's plenty. We're just going to keep talking about boobs, lawsuits and boobs and gropey men. We're not talking about affordable health care, and that's what the establishment really wants. They don't want us as a species of people to be talking about things that could actually help us now, creating more green spaces in the inner cities for people, creating libraries that are open late, creating commons, creating jobs that provide meaning, creating healthy communities instead of destroying communities. So we're not talking about that. Access to healthcare. We had a huge access problem during this recent pandemic. If COVID was really deadly as they said it was, not when it's deadly, not just because they were mismanaging it so horribly, but was actually really deadly, then we would need a system where people could actually get in and get tested, and then we could do quarantines and stuff like that. And we could test people for antibodies and find out if they already had it, and we could use monoclonal antibodies not just for super rich people but for more people. We need that to happen. As a working class person, you should be advocating for stuff like that. You should be concerned about stuff like that, not who did their own research, or who watched a Joe Rogan video. You shouldn't be concerned about that. You should be concerned about how horribly private equity, insurance controlled healthcare system failed and is continuing to fail. It doesn't have extra capacity to handle the pandemic. There's no empty beds at the hospital. They don't maintain empty beds. They don't maintain capacity for things. They're selling drugs. They're pushing hardcore weird pharmaceuticals on people. That's true. That's what's really going on. And anyway, enough said.